Hey everyone, this is Diane, and welcome to Lady Speaks, where I will help you navigate, understand, and heal from some of the things that you have been dealing with since your childhood. We have healing to do, so let's get started. So today I want to talk about getting back to who you were born to be. So many times in life we go through things that we can't understand. Just things we have no control over. Actions are done against us. It could have been when we were young. It could have been even present day. And unfortunately, those things really took a big part of who we thought we were. And for me personally, going through those different situations in my life left me feeling completely shattered. I remember last year I was talking to my brother, and he just happened to call me in the middle of the night, just out of nowhere. And in that moment, I really believe like God encouraged him, impressed upon him, put it in his heart, on his mind, in his spirit to reach out to me in the middle of the night. Because that particular night, I was contemplating ending it all. I was thinking about, okay, here's everything here. Here's how I would do it. And just processing these thoughts, right? And the pain that I was experiencing, even though I thought for a long time that I really was healed from so much of that trauma, from my childhood and young adult life, it wasn't real. I really wasn't healed, because what happened was I was sweeping it under the rug, because I was so engulfed in being a parent, being a sibling, being a lover, being a daughter, being a business owner, just doing all these different things that kept me occupied, right? And when some of those things were stripped away, it really left me feeling completely raw, just very much exposed. And I've never had a problem like being alone or being by myself. I find a lot of peace in that. But what I discovered was I was being triggered over and over and over again. And so, I reached out to a therapist, and I was just telling them, man, I am really struggling here. Like, these emotions and these feelings, they just keep coming up. I don't know why I'm getting triggered. I don't know why these feelings are just boiling over to where I literally felt like I could not breathe. That I constantly felt like I was hanging by a thread. And I mean, like, the thinnest thread you can think of. That's how much pain I was in. And I was suffering internally, and I didn't expose that to anyone because, I'm just like, I don't need to show that to my family. I don't need to show that to the people I love and care for, because I don't want them to worry about me. I don't want them to feel any kind of way or anything like that. So I just made a decision to suffer in silence. And the reason why I thought that was okay was because growing up, especially in in a Haitian household, right? A very traditional Haitian household. Being the child of someone from a different country, the values and the ideas of how they look at children is very different than some of those American values, right? And it's no fault, I believe, like, to my parents, because one thing I've learned as an adult and in this present moment in my life is that people have the tools that they have, and they have a lot of the behaviors that they learned. And the generations, I feel, before, let's say, for example, my generation, I'm a millennial. Those generations, they dealt with so many different types of adversity, and then just years and years of conditioning, right? And so when they have children, this is all they know. They don't know better because they were never shown better. They were never taught better. This is what they know. And so growing up, there was no such thing as a child being depressed, because it was more so like, okay, you have no reason to be depressed. You're a kid. Why are you stressed out? Why are you sad? You don't have bills. You don't have responsibilities. There's no reason for you to have these feelings and emotions. And so from a very young age, I learned very quickly to shut all that down and to bottle all that in and to not expose that to anyone, because if I did, it made me seem as if I was being, I would say, like a kid that was just like misbehaving, right? Or who didn't want to listen, who was just acting out. When in reality, if you're not taught how to understand and recognize certain things in your life when you're growing up and recognize emotions, or how to deal with emotions and feelings and thoughts, and you don't know how to navigate that because you're not taught how to do that, then you're kind of like in the wilderness, just searching and just getting lost and stumbling and falling over things, and just you're falling down the cliff, you're trying to pick yourself up, you're tripping over logs. Like, it's just a mess, and then it's completely dark because you have no idea and no clue on where you're going with what you're feeling, right? And you don't know what to do with that. And so that's what I knew. And I didn't realize that as an adult, I was literally doing the exact same thing again, just holding everything in, bottling everything in, and feeling like if I were to even speak or express some of these feelings and emotions, that I would be a burden to the people I love and I care for. When in reality, the people I love and care for really don't want to see me suffering, and vice versa. So for me, it was always easy to be there for everyone else and not really allow myself to have someone be there for me the way I needed someone to be there for me. It took me a long time to be able to find a way to be vulnerable enough to where I could say, okay, this is what's wrong, this is what I'm feeling, and be really honest about it, versus like sugarcoating it or kind of brushing it off, or no, it's not really a big deal. Yeah, I'm okay, I'll be fine. But the reality is, inside, I'm like screaming and crying for help, right? But I didn't want to be that burden on anyone. And so last year, just feeling like I was holding on by a thread. And every day I felt like I was drowning in this darkness. And the best way I could describe it is like, it's pitch black, but not only is it pitch black, you can't even breathe. You know, you try to take a breath of air and it feels like there's toxins being inhaled into your body. And so then you feel like you're suffocating. So then you don't want to breathe because it's too scary to breathe in and out, because you're afraid that, okay, when I breathe in, all these toxins are going to come inside of me. That's what it felt like. Like I didn't even know how to be there for myself, right? Because I was really dealing with things that happened to me when I was younger, and things that my parents didn't know about and they had no control over. You know, they did the best that they could with what they knew, but unfortunately, other people that came into my life did a lot of harm, you know, and that's why it's so important for any parent that is out there to really speak to your children. And this is one of the things that some of the people that know me, they disagree with, and that's perfectly fine. But it's so important to speak to your children at a young age. And I'm not saying make it vulgar, you know, but definitely explain to them and give them examples, because you have to remember you're talking to a child who has been on the earth for like 2.3 seconds, right? And so they don't have the understanding. So anytime you hear an adult say to another adult about a situation that happened to that adult when they were children, well, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? A lot of people say that. A lot of parents say that to their children who are not adults, who might be telling them, hey, this happened to me when I was younger. That parent says, well, why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell me? You have to remember that you're not talking to the adult at the time. It was the child. So the child doesn't understand or know or have the ability to recognize what the heck is going on unless you give them the tools to do that. And so not being given the tools to be able to recognize the harm that was being done to me really set me on a path of, I would say, just kind of emotional distress, right? And basically like having PTSD, like you just never know what might happen that might trigger those emotions. And that's why for me, I'm not comfortable being in large crowds, and I'm very comfortable just being at home, and I don't really like to go out like that. I don't make friends that easily because it takes me a long time to trust. All those things everything that's a part of me right now stemmed from me as a child, and it manifested itself into who I am today. And so it takes so much work to fix and rebuild and to remold the person that you want to be, and to work on healing the parts of you that you had no control over when you were younger, right? And so it's just very difficult. And so advice I would give you, if you're a parent listening to this, one of the things I did with my children, I have twins. I also have experience in the medical field. And so it was important for me to explain to my children, even before they could talk, I explained to them what their body parts were. I didn't tell them this is what you do with this body part and that part. No, but it was more so like, okay, I didn't give their body parts like these kitty names, or, I made sure they understood the anatomical medical term for the different body parts. So that way, God forbid, if something were to happen were to happen to my child or whatever, when they were at school or in the care of someone, they could articulate to me exactly what happened. This person touched this part of me, and it was the actual anatomical name for that body part. So it's easy to understand. Thankfully, that has never happened, because if you listen to my previous podcast where my daughter's interviewing me, and that one was released a few years ago, she'll say like, yes, I'm very protective over them. And as a parent, they're in their teenage years now, and I'm having to learn to really allow them to do their own thing and trust that they're going to make the right decisions, trust that they're going to be in the right places. And I just have to know that I gave them the tools that they need to be able to be out in society safely, and that they have the ability to recognize any red flags, because I've given them those tools. I've taught them the examples. I've told them very specifically, for example, if you have a child, it's important to tell them, hey, it's one thing if you tell your child, if someone touches you on, let's say, your vagina or your breast or your penis or your butt, that's not okay. But it's also important to teach your child that if a person tells you to, for example, use your mouth on this particular body part, if the person tells you take your hand and touch this particular body part, if the person tells you to do something with your own body, it's important to give the child examples. Some people might think, well, you're over-sexualizing a child. No, what you're doing is teaching your child what to recognize, because you have to remember they do not know. They don't have an idea, an example. They don't know any of this. And so it's important to tell them these are the things you should look for, and then give them the response and let them know, if this ever happens, tell me immediately. I will always believe you. I don't care if the person tells you not to say anything. I don't care if the person says, I'm going to hurt your parents, I'm going to hurt you. Tell them that you find me, you tell me immediately, as soon as you can. So it's really important for you to explain that to your children. Giving your children the tools they need to navigate childhood is really important, because at the end of the day, predators are everywhere, okay? And predators come in so many different forms, right? And so for example, growing up, I was molested by a man and I was molested by a woman, okay? At a young age. I didn't understand or even know any of these things, because my parents, they didn't think that it would be an issue. I don't really know. I think for them, they just felt like, okay, these are good people. They wouldn't do anything to hurt my children, because they're around us all the time. They're nice. They go to church, and so they just were very trusting. And they didn't think to help me as a child, to tell me, hey, if a person does X, Y, and Z, says X, Y, and Z, tells you to do X, Y, and Z, that's not okay. Come to me immediately. Tell me something. Say something. Whatever it is. They didn't know that they needed to give me those tools as a child growing up. And because I didn't have those tools, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have the ability to recognize as a child, 6, 7, 8-year-old child, 9-year-old child, what is going on. The world is very different from when I was growing up. Now you have technology and all these different things. And so I feel like children are so much more exposed to the world. Whereas when I was growing up, and like I said, I'm a millennial, I'm 41, things were very different, and so I didn't have the exposure or the access to information at my fingertips. And so really, as a child, you rely on your parents or your caregivers to give you the tools you need to be able to grow up, to be able to develop, to gain wisdom, to gain understanding, to know how to protect yourself, to know how to articulate and say what you need to say. You need that. That's why children are innocent, because they don't have the ability to just kind of make those decisions. Children see and they do. So they're constantly mimicking what they see. That's why, for example, or what they hear. For example, you have children born in so many different cultures. They speak different languages. It's not like they're born knowing how to speak that language or knowing about the culture, but as they're growing up, they hear it, they see it, and so it's natural. This is what they've learned. This is what their brain have, learned, and that's it. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you're giving your children the tools that they need. You just imagine your child, if you're an artist or if you ever appreciate art, imagine your newborn child, your baby, is a blank canvas, okay? And everyone that comes into contact with your child has a paintbrush in their hand with paint on it. And they will make a stroke on that canvas. So you have this newborn child who's a white canvas, and every interaction that someone has with this newborn child, they're making a paint stroke on that canvas. Ultimately, what happens is, if you're not mindful and careful of who you have around your children, or giving your children the tools they need to be able to recognize certain red flags, then that little white canvas can turn into something very dark and very scary, or very sad, or very depressed. And so instead of this beautiful rainbow blue sky picture, it's this very dark, sad image that when you look at it, you can just see the pain. And now, you have paint on a canvas. What do? It's there forever, right? It doesn't wash off. It's there forever. And so as you grow up and you become an adult, these different interactions have created this image of who you now are. And it's only when I would say, when you're starting to kind of like, when you're like a teenager going into your adult life, where you're going to start using your own paintbrush to paint on your own canvas, right? But sometimes because of those interactions from growing up, there may not be that much room for you to go ahead and create the person you want to be. And so what do? You paint over it. But really, even though you're painting over it, the damage has been done. And what really should happen is you getting a new canvas and starting over. But that's not realistic. That's not life. You can't just start over. So you have to literally heal from all this trauma or whatever you went through growing up. And you have to take a step back and look at your life, look at yourself, and be open and honest with yourself and say, hey, I am really hurting, and I maybe I don't recognize where this pain is coming from. Why do I always feel angry? Why am I always feeling sad? Why do I feel triggered by certain things? Like, what is it? Right? And some things you may not even know that you're having a trauma response from something that happened when you were younger. And the thing is, you don't even remember what happened when you were younger. So you don't realize that it's a trauma response. So let me give you a perfect example of having a trauma response and not realizing that that's exactly what it is, right? So for example, myself, for some particular reason, and I've never understood it my entire life. For example, if I was taking a shower, like I could never just let the water just fall on my face. Some people get in the shower, the water just could drench their whole face, no issues. I would literally hyperventilate. I would have a mini panic attack in the shower because the water's like falling on my face or whatever. And so my response to that has always been to use my hands to put the water on my face versus allowing the water to just splash on my face from the shower head. Same thing with getting in the pool or swimming, just always terrified of water just covering my face. And I never understood why was I having these panic attacks. I didn't know. I had no clue. Or if someone went to go like touch my face, like I would just be like, whoa, what are you doing? Don't touch my face. And I would freak out. When I tell you freak out, I would freak out, guys. And I just didn't know why I was freaking out. I never understood it. I just thought, this is who I am. Clearly this is how I've always been, whatever. It's not until about 5 years ago, I had one of these reactions in front of my mom. And the thing is, my mom always knew, like, Diane, she doesn't like anyone touching her face. She, this, that, and the third. She just don't do it. Don't. She'll freak out. She'll, whatever. You just don't want to touch her face at all. Just don't do it. 5 years ago, I had that reaction in front of her, and she said, oh my God, I finally remember why I think you're reacting this way. I said, what are you talking about? I have no clue what she's talking about, because I don't remember anything happening or whatever. And to me, this is just normal for me. This is just who I am. Like, I don't know anything else. And so she's like, when you were a little girl, I was about maybe 1 or 2 years old when I was born in Haiti, by the way. And she said, we were in Haiti, and her and her friend had a daughter as well. And so it wasn't like a tub. I would just say it was like this, it was like a mini basin almost. It wasn't huge at all. It was just a little something to bathe the child in, right? And so they were bathing, the mother was bathing her daughter, her child. And apparently this was like my little friend or whatever. I was like 1 or 2 years old. This is my little friend, little play date, not a big deal. The mother's bathing the child in this little basin, this little tiny little mini tub. So tiny. It's like, think of like a little bowl or whatever. The baby's in there, or the kid, I think the little girl, she was a little bit like around my age as well. And so my mom said, they stepped away for a little bit to go get something on the other part of the house. And then she just realized that, wait, I don't hear them laughing. I don't hear any noise. And so they went to where we were. Like, they ran there because they didn't hear us making noise. And she said the little girl was literally holding my head under the water, because I was sitting on the floor next to her. And she said the little girl was holding my head and pushing my head in the water. And I was trying to fight to get out. As an adult, being given this information, I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that it happened to me. I had no clue that happened to me. But it helped me understand, okay, so this is a trauma response. This is not something that's part of me. I wasn't born this way, to be fearful of the water and all this other stuff. It's because when I was 1 or 2 years old, I was almost drowned by another baby, another child, And so now I understand why I am reacting this way and why I'm having a panic attack anytime someone goes near my face, or the water just splashes on my face in the shower versus me being able to control it with like my hands or whatever. Now I understand why I freak out if I'm in the pool. I get it. And being given that information empowered me to heal from that, because now I know what the source is. So that's what I mean, how you could be having a trauma response from something that happened when you were younger and you don't even realize that you're having a trauma response. And like I said, I'm 41. This happened when I was about 2 years old, maybe. And I found out this information when I was like 34, 35. That is a long time to be having a trauma response to something that happened to you when you were a little girl and you don't even have memory of it. I don't remember anything about that situation. But thankfully, my mom was able to remember in that moment and give me a piece of information that has allowed me to heal from that. And so from that point on, what I've been doing when I'm in the shower or at a pool, or because I want to be able to go to the pool. I want to be able to go to the beach. I don't want to freak out, and just have like a panic attack. I don't want that for me. I want peace in my life, okay? And I'm sure everybody does. But now that I have this piece of information, what I've been able to do is when I'm in the shower, I say, okay, I allow the water to fall on my face from the shower head. And when I feel that panic attack coming on, I take deep breaths and I say, okay, you are safe. You are not being drowned. You are in control. You are safe. And so by saying those things and repeating that to myself, I've been able to heal from that trauma to where now, years later, I don't have an issue with that. I'm not having those panic attacks anymore. And so it's really important to understand where your initial trauma came from and to understand what your response is to it so you can heal from that, so you can address it directly. And again, this is why I will reiterate, when it comes to your children or young people, help them. Give them the tools they need so that way they're not adults dealing with trauma responses later on in life, okay? Because it is difficult. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know what I mean. When you are just suffering and you can't understand why you're having this pain, or why you're feeling depressed, or why you're sad, or why you're having a panic attack, or why you're feeling anxious, why you're feeling scared. Like, you just don't understand it. And you're like, there's something wrong with me. But the reality is, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're having a trauma response to something that happened to you years prior. Okay? And because you've never been able to pinpoint it and address it and then work on healing from it, you're in a state of confusion, feeling like there's something wrong with you when there's really nothing wrong with you. Just know that God made you perfect in His image, okay? You are perfect. There's nothing wrong with you. Unfortunately, in life, things happen to us that we do not have control over. And so, we end up having these trauma responses. And so I want to just give you some piece of encouragement today, because I know if I can get through these things that I've been dealing with majority of my life, to be able to even be here today, to have these conversations with you right now, and I'm 41 years old, it's 2023, and I'm able to have these conversations with you, I hope and pray that this really touches you and helps you understand, or begin to understand, why you're feeling the way you feel. And you're not blaming yourself anymore. Okay? You're not saying there's something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you. Unfortunately, your beautiful canvas that was beautiful and perfect when you were born had some ugly ass brush strokes put on it. And it made you believe that this is who you are, when God, in fact, calls you perfect. God calls you His. God calls you His perfect creation. You are not what happened to you. You are not the trauma that has happened to you. You are not what people say you are, as far as like if they want to say that you're a horrible person, all these ugly, nasty things that people really just feel so pressed to express on a regular basis. It's just know that you are not who people call you. You are who God calls you to be. And that is perfect. And there's nothing you can do. And I promise you, and you will learn this as I continue to make other podcasts. I'm going to reach, I'm going to talk more about how I have been able to heal, and I'll share some of these different tidbits with you. So, listen for the next podcast. Turn on, if you haven't yet, subscribe, like, share, and turn on your notification for the next podcast. But I'm going to show you what I've been able to do, and I'm going to help guide you through some of these healing steps that I've taken in my life to where I'm here today. And I can tell you without a doubt that there is nothing that you can ever do for God not to love you. No matter how imperfect you may feel you are, no matter how much you think I'm the biggest sinner and all these other things, none of that matters, because all that matters is today. That today you say, you know what, Lord, I'm giving it up to you. Guide me, lead me, forgive me. And then you do the best you can. Every day, it's baby steps. Are you going to tumble? Are you going to fall? Yes. But guess what? That's okay. We're human. Okay? Jesus didn't die on the cross for no reason. And so it was done. The battle was won that day on the cross when Jesus said, it is done. And you just need to know that God loves you so much. I had to learn that even when I was being molested and raped as a child, even when adults were telling me that I would never be anything, no one would ever want me, I would be roaming in the streets, all these different things that adults were saying to me as a little girl, a little girl that deserved to be loved, protected, guided. Even when all that was happening, I had to realize that no matter how much those individuals wanted to destroy me and take away the crown that God placed on my head when He created me, that today there is nothing that could ever remove that crown. No matter how much they tried to tarnish, tear me down, break me down, destroy me, there was nothing that could ever remove that crown that God placed on my head. God called me His. And that's what I had to learn. And I had to really hold on to that because I was hurting in such a bad way. But I am so thankful to be able to be here today. And even in the midst of all of that adversity, all of those trials and tribulations, all of that abuse, those storms and those dark moments, I can make a decision to use what I went through to help guide you today if you're listening. And I pray that you receive it to help guide you through whatever you may be going through, or if you're a parent, to help guide you on how to communicate with your young children so that they don't go through these same things. Okay? And so I'm thankful and I'm blessed that I have a platform to do that. And so I just pray that God blesses you and helps you understand a little bit more about me and possibly see the love that is inside of you as well. You know, this life is a blessing and it's yours to live. Just like I had to understand that this life is for me. It was given to me. It belongs to no one else. This was a gift that God gave me. And no matter who kept trying to take it from me, it still belonged to me. And I am choosing to cherish every waking moment. And so I pray that you are able to be blessed. You know that God loves you and that there's nothing that can ever take His love away from you. You are called His and He made you perfect. That's it. So until next time, I love you guys. If you've been listening all this time, I really appreciate it. Thank you for tuning into my podcast. And I pray blessings, abundance, love, peace, and happiness and healing upon your life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Turn on your notifications. And until next time, be blessed. I love you guys. Thank you for listening to Lady Speaks podcast. Now remember that in life, it's not about the lemons, but the process of making lemonade. Until next time, have a great day.